Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this talk. My name is Marco. I'm a designer on Android. I lead the design team that works on Google Play and the core Android applications.
And I'm Kirill. I'm a UI engineer on the Google Play team, working mostly on the Store app.
Right. So today we're going to be talking about Google Play. Let's see how many people use Google Play here, just to make sure that everybody knows what it is. How many people use at least one application in Google Play? Great. How many people use at least 2 applications on Google Play? 3 applications? The whole suite? Great. We have some fans. So for anyone who didn't raise their hand, Google Play is basically, in practice, 6 applications which define the media offering from Google. It's the store where you purchase content, and it is a set of applications where you enjoy the content you purchased or you got for free, like books, music, movies, magazines and news, and games. Today, we're going to talk to you about a journey that our team took about a year ago when we redesigned the Play suite of applications. We think this is a very interesting journey because it talks about some of the principles that we've shown yesterday, during the keynote, which is the one adaptive design. Our experience was basically around thinking about a system that could scale across all devices and that could be consistently perceived as one suite, as one family of applications, where iconography, colors, how the content is displayed, interaction was defined once to scale across all devices and different platforms. This is how it should feel. It is multiple devices, and in a sense, the UI is scaling across them in a very consistent and familiar way, where the interaction doesn't change and where the user is not surprised. There are problems that we face today where the experience is almost more important to be defined across all devices, to be consistent, rather than very specific for web versus iOS versus Android, because we see users scaling and moving across all devices in a very fluid way. So this was Play in 2012. As you can see, there were a set of applications not very consistent with one another. And if you went to the web, we had even yet another mental model, another look and feel, and another approach to interaction. The issues, in essence, were the design wasn't consistent, the design didn't scale, and one size couldn't fit all of our users. Design wasn't consistent. In essence, you see that even the same content, like albums, will be represented differently from web to devices to the store. We just had a lot of interaction models. Design that didn't scale because we had different design for web and devices. We ended up having to design the same feature multiple times, and this was taking a lot of time from design side, where we had to be thinking about the same feature, but how it would behave and be implemented from an interaction design perspective and visual design perspective on web versus devices. And one size couldn't fit all because we essentially didn't have a way to display content dynamically. Especially on the store, we had to draw tiles manually to recommend content to our users, but we couldn't generate content in a dynamic way to suggest content that was really personalized to people, because there wasn't a way to display it. So our goals that we set up for this project were to create consistency across Play applications, to have efficient layouts across device and web, and to be able to populate our content dynamically. So where did we start? We actually didn't start by thinking about grids, and we didn't start thinking about the spaces where the information would live. We rather started thinking about the modules that we would use to fill up our spaces. So what was our key component? Our key component was a card. Back then, as today, Google was embracing this metaphor. And it felt for us that if content is what we display most of the time in our Play applications, a card felt like a very good common denominator to display these types of objects. It would be good to display applications, to display albums and movies and magazines and books, even people or places, you name it. it was a very good way to display objects and to sort of have this common denominator that could make these interactions across objects consistent. The way you would remove objects, the way you would add objects, the way you would do actions with objects could be consistent no matter what these objects were and no matter where they lived. The second item, the second structural item that we thought about were the canvases, which essentially are where these objects live. A canvas is just a space. In the Holy Grail of Google is the color E5, 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 which lives in many different places of our applications. What we did, we started defining our space divided in columns so that the content could be displayed in a similar fashion and across a grid that was defined to scale across multiple devices' width. So the more the device was large, the more content we could display. And you could have less or more content. It could be reordered. The content was basically living object into these canvases. It could change according to context. It could be grouped in clusters, as I'll show you later, or into this big long list or big long grids, like in a search result. It could be content like movies. It could be content like people. We have this view in our Play Games application. And a canvas didn't have to be necessarily a gray background. A canvas is essentially anything that is living underneath. In Play Movies, if you played with this application, we have an awesome feature where basically when you pause the movie, we identify who the actor is. We also identify if there's a song playing in the background, and we tell the user. So here we identify the actor. And you see we show a person's card, and we show a bunch of movies where this actor had been participating. And we do it in the same consistent way. The movie playing is just a canvas where our content is displayed dynamically. We do the same thing in books. When we select a word and this word is a location, we identify that being a location and we show the location card. Even here, the canvas is content. A third item in our list were sizes. Obviously, a size that looks a card that looks of a certain size on a phone, the same size will be perceived smaller on bigger screens, simply because the larger the canvas, the more the size will be perceived small versus the same size being used on a smaller screen. So this is a tiny card which we use on phone, which turns into a small card which we use on tablets. And we started defining a bunch of other different cards because layouts need to adapt, the cards need to adapt to different layouts that need different characteristics, like list views. We also defined sizes because we needed hierarchy as well. When we recommend content, we like to say, this is very special for you. We make it very big. And we like to say, these are maybe other things you may be interested about. This could be smaller. So sizes are super important. And again, while the sizes change, the interaction doesn't change. We always have those overflow menus on those cards. We always have the same way we represent this content. You should almost feel like the content is this card which is expanding and moving and twisting around, but it doesn't change. It's the same card, even in a list view. Another item were the clusters. So for the psychology of perception, when I have multiple items next to one another, obviously they will be perceived as a group. And groups are important to define areas where the user should interact, or also collections. And you see here where the hierarchy is preserved when we have big items and smaller items. And you can also see that when we define these sizes, we made sure they were part of the same modular system so they could be plugged into one another. We also made sure that these sizes would make sense across all the devices we have. They would make sense on phones. They would make sense on 7-inch tablets or 10-inch tablets and beyond, including the web. Let's talk about interaction now. We have websites, we have touchscreen devices. We think that the interaction should be consistent. The user shouldn't feel lost when it goes between an Android device to an iOS device to the web. Obviously, the web has a different type of interaction because you use a mouse most of the time. But the pattern can be still consistent. So we use a side navigation, which is hidden on devices. You need to tap on what people call the hamburger menu. But on web, we actually leave it exposed because we have more space. Also, you see that the navigation menu provides the same type of informations. However, we did make some differences to make sure that all the different form factors could be the most efficient as possible. So you see here, playlist is exposed as a single destination on devices to the right, while on the left, on web, the playlists are exposed in the Sun navigation itself, so the user can drag content into it, and we can facilitate a faster interaction. Nevertheless, the positions where you find your content, where you navigate, is consistent across web and devices here. Let's look at another example, the tabs. If you're an Android user, you know that we have swipey tabs, so you can swipe from one another. This doesn't happen on the web. It will be very difficult to swipe with the mouse. But still, we have the same information being displayed. In this example, to the right, or to my left, I'm swiping to see genres on touchscreen devices. On the web, I need to select a particular item and see a drop-down list. So the interaction is slightly different, but again, the user will not feel lost because the positioning of those elements is consistent. We have menu buttons. On the web, we expose them on rollover. This is the play music experience on the web. While on devices, we expose menu buttons at the single card level because we don't have rollover, obviously. On iOS, we have panels that slide from the bottom because this is the typical iOS pattern, and we want to make people feel at ease when they use our applications. On Android, we use pop-ups because this is how Android does. Again, the interaction is the same. The expressions of this interaction may change slightly between different platforms. So let's look at the outcome. These were our suite of applications. These are our suite of applications today. You see that the layouts feel more consistent. We have the menu item on top of every card. Everything is the same mental model. You also can perceive how we introduced a strong brand that we didn't have before, which is communicating through the use of strong colors. This is also another element that we're pushing through the material design this year across more applications. And the user, when faces play applications, should feel this is different. This is a part of the same family. This is true for devices. This is true for web. Our layouts, we think, are pretty responsive. You see in this example how the same structure is contained across multiple devices. Here I'm recommended the Batman movie because a friend of mine +1'd it. And the Batman movie is larger on devices like phones or tablets, but obviously on tablets the card becomes much bigger because we want to maintain the hierarchy on larger devices, and we need to make that card to be louder than what we would do on devices like phones, on smaller screens. It is modular, and it tries to adapt to the user. You see here, the system is slightly moving the face of this author in order to be displayed across smaller screens. Obviously, we have more space on tablets, but again, it is all responsive, and the type of display, the type of experience you have is pretty much the same. It is familiar. These two are different applications. The one to my right is the Playbooks application. The other one is the store. But navigating between two APKs doesn't have to feel like a very different experience. You have ways to still make your code efficient and build different applications and still make the experience to be fluid when the user is navigating between one application to another. We know we have people going between consumption to purchases use cases very often. And it is familiar when you face new play applications. Maybe you were a play music user, you want to see how the playbook applications work. We think that you're going to be welcomed by a very similar interface, and you're going to be feeling at home. It is responsive. Obviously, when you have a larger space, you get more content to be displayed. This is an example that I particularly like, where you see that on my right, we have a big card that wouldn't fit on a landscape layout. So even here, we maintain the hierarchy, but the card sort of adjusts itself to display the content to the right. Again, you should really feel that as I'm stretching my windows on a web browser, or as I'm changing my device, almost if magically the screen was changing in sizes. All my cards are responsive. They change in size. They try to adapt to whatever the form factor is. It works cross-platform. It works on web. It works on Android. We recently introduced also a mobile web UI, which compared to what we do on Android feels pretty much the same experience. It works on iOS, like I've mentioned before. These are the Play Music application compared between the two different platforms. And now I'm going to give the controller to Kirill. He's going to teach you some coding tricks, and he's going to talk more about some of these principles.
Yeah. Thank you, Marco. So what Marco talked about is this system that I would say is pretty efficient and flexible in presenting collections. So if you talk about what we call a landing page of the store where we want to show you multiple collections or items, top charts, my library in the music, or search results in various applications. And we wanted to extend this consistency and flexibility into additional parts of, into additional places where the users interact with our applications. So the first one is side drawer or navigation drawer that was introduced a year ago at I/O. And we've been slowly migrating, a little bit too slowly, if you will. We've been migrating our Play apps to use the side drawer. And we do want to see it, at least in the Play suite of apps, as these what we call primary destinations. We don't want to overload it with, like, you start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. We want to have something like 4, 5, or maybe 6 primary destinations within each app. And then we also put this kind of secondary actions, settings, help, and feedback. And what happens here is that once you know that you can swipe to the left or kind of tap that hamburger icon and see this navigation, you will apply that knowledge. You will be at ease across multiple apps, across pretty much all apps in the Play suite. From the technical implementation, we use the support library. Drawer layout itself is kind of the implementation of kind of that allows you to slide that thing from the left or from the right on RTL layouts. And for integration with the action bar drawer toggle. And we use consistent typography, iconography, and colors, once again, to kind of enforce this consistency. But this is talking about like the technical implementation details. But what is more important is that we do want to create this consistent navigation model across all our applications to put the user at ease whenever he is on Android or on iOS device or on the web. Swipey tabs, we use it in conjunction with the view pager. Sometimes we do want to kind of present this multi-tab experience. On the left, if you go from left to right, is different views into your music collection in the Play Music app. Then a single game in the Play Games, just different parts of kind of the information that we want to present. And the two last ones are various collections in the Play Store app. So what we want to have here is we want to have this multi-tab experience. And we use ViewPager from the support library that provides a very nice, consistent way that you can swipe left and right between the tabs. And we have our own custom implementation of the tab strip that you can swipe left and right independently of the tabs themselves. And we have this two-way kind of binding that to keep in sync, to keep the selection of the view pager itself and the tab strip in sync. Once again, a little bit of technical details, but what is most important is that once the user knows that he can swipe left and right, he or she can swipe left and right, the tab strip itself, that knowledge can be directly applied to other offerings from our Play suite of apps. And this is what happens. I think it's a nice touch. If you go from left to right, you switch from the About tab to the My Achievements tab. And in addition to the content itself kind of sliding from left to right, you can also see in the title strip the thick green underline, which kind of signifies the currently selected tab, it also slides. Instead of jumping immediately, it kind of slides to the newly selected tab, and it also shrinks or expands based on relative widths of these two tabs. And these are a little bit of technical details. On every scroll event, we compute the starting X position and the width of this underline, and we call invalidate on the title strip. And then in onDraw, we draw that green rectangle, or whichever color is needed for that specific content type. Once again, we want to be consistent across our multiple apps and to kind of enhance and enforce this consistency. Hero images are, I would say, a very big part of material design. I think Marco will agree with me. It's a very visually rich and attractive way, if the images look good, of course. It's a very attractive way to frame your content, to position your content. And they would usually go, I would say, they pretty much have to go at the top of your content. In this sequence of screenshots from left to right, you see an album page in the Play Music app, a movie page in Play Movies, a game page in Play Games, and an article in Play Newsstand. And here, a couple more screenshots from various places in the Play Store app. Matthias's profile, artist page, TV show page, and what we call an editorial collection. So what you see here is this hero image that goes edge to edge horizontally and also kind of goes into the action bar. So what we want to do with this action bar is, instead of this solid block of color that kind of hangs on top of your content and is kind of a little bit distracting, what we do here is we extend the hero image into the action bar. We effectively remove the action bar background while still showing the action bar title and your navigation icons, or our action bar icons. From the implementation point of view, you request this window feature, and you call drawable set alpha on your action bar background drawable, and that's it. The hero image, or effectively your content, will extend into the action bar, and that hero image, you should make it not have, like, black bars on top and on bottom, because that would look kind of ugly. And if you have these attractive images, it's going to be a very nice experience, not only cross-play, but you can see how it informed the specific part of the material design. And in these particular examples, all the images that I've shown were kind of dark, which provided a nice contrast to the white title and the white icons. But you do want to create kind of black, translucent black protection, translucent gradient along the top edge of your hero image, so that if your hero image is light, you still have enough contrast to show those kind of foreground elements on your action bar. Once you do start scrolling it, we do it consistently cross-play, and I'm pretty sure that it applies well beyond play once you start using hero images in your applications. Once you do start scrolling and you kind of have these, individual items, text, and maybe checkboxes, spinners, kind of scrolling below the action bar, you should make it opaque. You should kind of cross-fade it to fully opaque. Otherwise, there's too much noise when, text is scrolling behind text. And from the implementation perspective, you register a scroll listener on your main container. It can be list view, scroll view, recycler view, or if you have a custom container, you do that. You compute the alpha of the action bar background drawable based on how far you've scrolled and how tall the image is. And you call set alpha. Another nice touch is applied consistently across all play applications, once again to kind of enforce this feeling that it's that we are all part of this bigger suite of applications, is parallax scrolling, which also extended into the material design into this what we call the z-axis, where you have one or two elements on the screen that feel that they belong, that they are positioned a little bit farther away from you or a little bit closer to you. So what happens if you look at my face over there and this stone arc? From left to right, as I start scrolling, the vertical alignment of these two images is a little bit different from frame to frame. So what happens is that we make the hero image scroll a little bit slower than the rest of the content. Specifically, across play applications, we do it at half the rate, just to be consistent across, once again, across all our offerings. But this is not like, this is not like, like something set in stone. You can experiment with different values. It just gives a little bit more interest it adds kind of a little bit more flair to what happens when you start scrolling this content. In the same scroll listener that you have in this screen, in your fragment, in your activity, what you do is, or what we do is for, let's say, you scrolled it up by 200 pixels. What we do, the hero image itself, of course, is scrolled as part of this main column, and we push it down by 100 pixels. So what happens is that while the rest of the content is scrolling at a certain speed, the hero image is scrolling, or appears to be scrolling at half that speed. It appears to be a little bit farther away from you, creating this kind of Z offset, that it appears to be somewhere there in the background, while the main content here is kind of closer to me. We also have this interaction with, between hero images and the side drawer. We strongly feel that side drawer should be this kind of place where you navigate between primary destinations in your app. And so when you open a side drawer, we want to kind of de-emphasize the rest of the content. We want to kind of push it away a little bit away from you. You get it for free from the side drawer with this kind of translucent black overlay that you can see that there's kind of a shade drawn on top of the main content. In addition to that, we also crossfade the action bar to fully opaque. So what happens here is you can see that the hero image kind of goes even farther away from you, and the content also appears to kind of be pushed away from you, and the drawer kind of moves a little bit closer to you. Once again, we want to be consistent across all Play apps, and this is what we do. This is a specific example in the Play Store, but we do it everywhere in the Play apps. And a little bit of the technical details. On every slide event, we compute the alpha of the background drawable of the action bar based on how far along you are in this sliding motion and how far vertically you are in your column of content. And now back to Marko.
Thank you. So let's recap what we saw and what we learned from it. This was the state of play in 2012. A lot of different applications, different among themselves, different in the way they were working on web versus Android devices. Our goals were to create consistency, to have efficiency in the way we design our layouts and we implement them, and to be able to display content dynamically. This is where we ended up, or this is where we ended up until today. We have work going on and a lot of things coming, of course. But you can see what we achieved was to create a consistency and a strong brand, what we believe being a strong brand that differentiated our applications from other applications out there. They work across web with mobile versions, with the full dynamic population of content. We have the same layouts working on iOS, respecting the iOS pattern, but also bringing the Google Touch and the Google Play Touch. And that's what we think, how we think people should perceive our content. It's just about content, it's about colors, about photography. It doesn't matter which device you're using. What were the results? Certainly we increased the speed of execution. Before we were spending a lot of time in getting the same features in different applications or between web and devices, while at this point we're very fast in defining how things should work and make them work everywhere. Obviously, when you support more platform, you need more developers, but we didn't increase largely the number of designers, even if we started having applications on iOS and other platforms that we didn't support before. And we also saw more collaboration among designers. We can have more people focusing on a problem and tackling it and doing it very well, like introducing a new pattern and scaling across all applications, rather than having a lot of designers working in their own desk to solve a little problem for their little small application. So what is next?
So we have 4 additional sessions that I would recommend you if you're interested in seeing where we're going with material design. And specifically at 11 o'clock, I know we don't usually talk about what's next in the pipeline. But if you do want to see what Marco's team is doing, exploring, bringing Google Play further into the material world, if you had to select one session, go to the 11 o'clock session in this room. I really highly recommend it. I'm not going to say anything more beyond that. And can you go to the next slide? We have the Android design guidelines available at this URL. And in addition, yesterday we've published kind of cross-Google or material design guidelines at google.com/design. Your feedback is highly appreciated. This QR code or this short link. And additional sessions from this year's I/O and previous year's conferences is available on the Google Developers channel. And here we would like to thank you for your time today. You can find us on Google+. And thank you for your time. We have 12 minutes, 34 seconds for questions. There are 2 mics over here, and left and right. Thank you once again.
Questions? No questions? Do you want to go to the mic?
Hello, Mehmet from Chicago Content Direct. I have a question about the side drawer menu. What do you think about categorized side drawer menus? From your design, you have each menu element on its own, but some of the apps use a more categorized approach where they say these are your home side menus and these are your, let's say, different playlists under a playlist tab. Mm-hmm. So they are more categorized. What do you think about this approach?
Can I take this question? Yeah. I don't think there's one rule to fit them all. On Play specifically, we decided to only expose the main areas. There are other applications that expose a more granular list. I think it's important if you have a series of applications to be consistent within yourselves. So, if we had one Play application going one way, another Play application going another way, that probably would be confusing. But there isn't really a rule for what to put in the side nav in terms of destination. There is a rule, which is we should try not to put actions in the side nav. We should respect the overflow menu and the actions being exposed in the action bar or in the viewing itself, and use the side nav purely for destinations. But whether the destination is a singular playlist or it is the whole playlist area as a whole, there isn't really a special rule. I think it's up to the designer and to the developer to define based on their experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you don't want to end up with what happened in the late 90s in desktop applications when they kind of had this tools menu, which just threw random items that didn't have any connection with each other because there was no better place, if you will, to throw them. So the side drawer is not supposed to be a junk drawer.
Yeah, something you can do is also create hierarchy. As you see in our side navigation, we try to create some hierarchy between settings and send feedback and things like that versus the main destinations, which we try to highlight more.
Yeah, with typography and sizing.
Since we're talking side drawers, I've seen a couple of usability studies that say there's about a 50% drop-off in discoverability of the side drawer menu items versus tabs. Do you have any experience or additional data points in that area?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that, and I don't think it's new. I don't think you need a genius to write those sort of articles, because clearly, if you hide items inside a button, you're going to have less engagement than if those items were exposed. This is also true if you have actions in the overflow menu rather than being exposed, they will have less engagement. So obviously, yes, this is an heuristic. if you see the way we tackle this on our applications is that the side nav, yes, does have all the destinations you can go to, but we also expose most of the time those destinations in the main view. So for example, if you're in the store, we do have a people section, but if you have friends, we also expose an explore cluster in your main destination. Or if you see what we do on Newsstand, we have introduced a bunch of different tabs for you to read all the different sections you have. And in the side nav, really what we leave is a clear and consistent way to see what we have, despite of what is presented in the main navigation, in the main page, but also destinations that we think are less important and they shouldn't have a lot of engagement. So for instance, if you have a destination which is about library management, it's fine to be in the side nav because how many times do you go to a destination to delete an album or to do other things with this? But certainly your main experience is where you land, and there are ways to connect the dots even in the same main experience without having you to go to the side navigation. The side navigation can almost be a tree of all the things that you have within your application.
All right, looks like we're done.
Okay. If you want to talk to us, we're going to stay here for 7 more minutes without Mike.
Yeah, we'll be out in the hallway.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you.